Reaching my 80s has been such a shocking thing for me that it's very important for me to find joy in my 80s like I found in my 70s. My 70s was an extremely eventful time in my life. Writing my first books, producing my first short documentary, speaking for the first time. It had so many firsts that in my 80s, what I want to do is find joy, and I want to find firsts. And I want to not just lay back and just wait for what's coming, because there's plenty of time to do all new things and to reinvent and to excite myself. That's really what I want to do, is excite myself. I have fallen in love with photography later on in life, and to walk on the beach with my camera is such a big thrill. I had been a travel writer and a photographer years and years ago, so I always loved the camera, and I always loved portraits of people. These rocks to me were like portraits of people. They were like faces. They were showing me something so incredible. They were showing me actually age being beautiful and weathered, but still having that great wisdom and beauty. And it came at such a perfect time in my life. And so I fell in love with taking pictures of rocks and stones and tree trunks, all of this weathered beauty that even though they were old, they had this wonderful look to them that I treasured. So I've been taking pictures of them and was lucky enough to have my first show in December. The rocks have been through it all, and that's what fascinates me. And they're still there no matter what they've withstood. And I wrote a poem about them, actually saying that they're here to teach us that you can be standing there and stand firm and stand tall, no matter what you have withstood. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us at any age. I've written 2 books. The first one I wrote right after I was diagnosed with my cancer, when they said I had 2 months to live. I went to a writing class at hospice, which was poetry. And I hadn't written poetry in years and years, but I put pen to paper and never stopped writing since. So I wrote my first book, I Can Do This, Living with Cancer, not knowing that anybody was ever going to see it or that it was going to be published, but it was mostly for my children. But it turned out to help a lot of people, and that makes me feel wonderful. And then my granddaughter, who was 9 years old, came to me at the time, this was several years later, and said, "Nana, how would you like to write a book with me explaining cancer to children?" This was totally her idea. And I said, I love that, thinking that we'd write a little book that we would have Xeroxed and she and I would have a book together. But instead, she wrote the questions and I wrote the answers, and the American Cancer Society published it, and it's in libraries and cancer centers all over the country. When my grandchildren come up here, we go paddleboarding together, we go boogie boarding together, we play poker together. It's fun. They have fun with their grandmother. I think they're going to look at aging in a whole different manner. I feel that they're going to be living into their hundreds. The way that we know how to manage diseases now, it's a whole different thing. We know how to eat, we know how to exercise, we know how to take care of ourselves. So we don't smoke, we moderate our drinking, it's a whole different life. There has to be some downtime for a child to know how to create. If they go from one activity to another, they really have no time to reach in and find their own potential and creativity. So I would say my biggest thing is let them find their own life a little bit on their own. Let them find what they have time for and creativity for on their own. It was just an awakening like I've never had. For the first time in my life, I saw women that made their own living, that did their thing that they loved more than anything in life and got paid for it. Women that climbed mountains, women that did all these things that I thought, oh no. She had created this life, and that was the first thing that it dawned on me. She created her own life. She wasn't looking for somebody else to do this for her. She lived the life she wanted to live. I thought, oh, I get it. You can do that. I had seen women play cards at their country club. I had seen women play golf. I had seen women do these things, volunteer, but I had never seen a woman create her own life, and she was one. It's up to us not to be bored, not to say, oh, what shall I do, but to create your own life. If you're given an opportunity, it's really where you can show your colors and where you can show your different ways of handling things. And it's not what we're thrown, but how we handle what's thrown that really matters. And that's when I like to step up. And that's when I like to get a hold of things and figure out how to do it. The reward is definitely greater at the end, because not only have you done what you were afraid of, but you're so excited that you have followed through with it, and it gives you a real burst of self-esteem and enables you to go on to the next thing that comes your way, because life is full of surprises, good and bad, and we have to be able to teach ourselves to handle those surprises. This was my second diagnosis of cancer. My first diagnosis was 12 years prior to 2002, and I had uterine lining cancer. I had a hysterectomy and thought no more about it, even though my grandmother, my mother, and two sisters had died of cancer. I thought I had received that cancer diagnosis, I had taken care of it, and it was over. 12 years later, however, when I got some stomach pains, after many tests, we found out that the contained cells from my first cancer were not so contained and had moved into a second cancer, which now became fourth stage uterine stromal sarcoma. They gave me 2 months to live at this time, and they gave me a choice of treatment to do, which was very stringent chemotherapy, then an operation, then more stringent chemotherapy, and said that if I didn't do it, I would be missing my window of opportunity. I didn't feel as though that's what I wanted to do at that stage in my life, and I was 68 years old at the time, and I had watched my grandmother, mother, and two sisters die of cancer, and I said, that's not for me. So I kept going to other appointments, and I strongly urge everybody to get more than one opinion. I think that's so important, not because doctors aren't trying to do the best that they can, but because there's so much new information out there, and there's new information being shared around the world now that's so important, and we must find that out. That's our job, is to be co-partners with our doctors. We have to look at aging in a whole different way, like we have to look at cancer in a whole different way. Cancer has become a manageable disease, so has aging. I'm 80 years old, and years ago, 80 years old was really old. You were in a rocking chair. That was the old joke. You'd sit in a rocking chair. Well, now I have so many friends that are 80 and older that are just living wonderful lives and starting new jobs, starting new romances, starting new lives, reinventing constantly. And I think that's how we have to look at aging now, and I do. Now I'm writing a blog called Aging in High Heels while surviving cancer and living life and growing older. And so I'm still writing and loving it, and I'm hoping to turn that into my third book. You drop something as you grow older, which is any pretense, which for me is the wonderful news. There's very little BS as you grow older. You have no time for it. And so, I don't feel good today. I don't feel well today. I'm staying in bed today. Your friend says, I totally get it. Talk to you tomorrow. I don't feel like going tonight. I don't feel like going to that function. It's okay. We get to do that. Keep moving forward. Health cannot be your only subject in life, which is a temptation, I must say, because we spend a lot of our time with doctor's appointments. But we have to always have our eye on the prize, which is after the doctor's appointment, we go on a walk. After the doctor's appointment, we go look at the sunset at the beach. Just because I exercise doesn't mean that I don't have aches and pains. I do have aches and pains, but I do have tips. For instance, I went to Europe this year with my husband, and this was the first year that I haven't hobbled along on high heels. I only wore them on special occasions, and I brought these wonderful chartreuse Saucony tennis shoes, walking shoes, and they have about this inch and a half of comfort. And I tore all over Paris and Capri in them, and I couldn't have been happier. So that's one of my tips. And my other tip is to, even though you might feel good or whatever, take a nap. Take care of yourself. Your age still is an age, and so your body is different. You can't do the same things you did at 50. I still hike, but I don't hike as far. I can't kid myself. I can't hike 5 days in a row anymore. There are certain things that I have calmed down or changed, and instead of stopping them, I'll do it sideways, so I'll feel better about it. And if I don't play 18 holes of golf, I'll play 9 holes of golf. And so there's all kinds of ways to, and of course I have things wrong with my eyes, I have things wrong with my feet, I have plenty of things wrong. We just have to learn how to slide around it and find things we can do instead.